Yeah, I have not switched on my camera. Yes, but you don't need to wear a mask to speak, ma'am.
No, no, I'm wearing a mask because of some other reason. There are people inside.
Okay.
Oh, it's live? Okay. Yeah, can you see me? Yeah, Ankur, can I switch off your phone or should I keep it on? Okay, okay. Anil, are you there? Am I too early, Ankur? Okay.
हाँ बेटा अंकुर हाँ 10-12 minutes. Can I see you? Can you see me? अच्छा तो अब मेरे को जब शेयर करना होगा थोड़ा सा बता दो कैसे शेयर करना शुरू करूंगा. Mute my screen. How do I mute it? How do I mute that? अच्छा हम
PhD in organizational psychology, Ms. Somaiya has enabled leading business organizations such as the Tata Group and Unilever Now, I would like to request Ms. Somaiya to begin the session.
Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. And in human resource development. I would like to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to interact with you. I don't claim to be the end of all knowledge in anxiety and stress, but out of the experience of my living for about 63, 64 years on this planet and working in various scenarios, I would like to just some of the personal learnings and some of the understanding that I have picked up over these years. The first point that I would like to make is that stress and anxiety is universal. I wouldn't say all. I would not hazard that guess by saying all, but I think almost everybody in life experiences stress and anxiety, and therefore it is an integral part of living. Secondly, stress and anxiety has two aspects. One is the protective aspect, where the anxiety itself and stress itself helps an individual to keep intact safety, protects the individual from any kind of untoward, destructive, harmful events. It could be psychological, it could be health, it could be economic, it could be social. So it has a protective element, anxiety and stress itself. It also has a preventive element. It prepares an individual from not getting into any harm, not getting into any hurt, not getting into insecurity or unsafety. So the protective element of stress and anxiety and the preventive element of stress and anxiety is learned. I don't think any infant in this world is born, or I would say the infant is not born born with skills and competencies to protect. All this is learned during life, during interaction in the social system, during work. So it's a learned phenomenon. There was a very famous psychologist, Gustav Pavlov, and he studied in the initial years, I think around the turn of the century, he studied the phenomena of stressing anxiety. And he said that it is basically anchored in fear, and one can learn how to become fearful about anything in life and in this world. And this is mainly done through what he called the association principle. For instance, he did experiments on monkeys and on dogs. And he said that when a dog is hungry and you present food to the dog starts to salivate. After a little while, hearing the steps the dog starts to salivate. So the response of salivation extends to just hearing the steps of the person who brings him the food. And therefore, there is an association, there is a transfer. Similarly, if a child is fearful of the dark, and then you tell the child that in the dark you will encounter some animal, and you describe the animal to the child. Even not entering the dark, the child will experience that fear. And the point that I'm trying to make is that fear and anxiety can be transferred. It develops through association. It is learned. It is not something that you're born with. If it is learned, it can be unlearned. If it is learned, then you can develop skills and competencies to manage it, like any other thing. It's not easy to manage, but it's also not very difficult to manage. There is also a facilitative aspect to stress and anxiety. What does it facilitate? It facilitates individuals towards targets and goals, and for taking actionable steps. So it is a propelling energy. It is a propelling force. Very simple example is that if there is a little bit of stress and anxiety, a student will do well in examinations because the target is there, and the energy to propel the individual towards that target is present inside the mind, the body, the heart. The competence to manage it is there, and therefore it becomes a propelling force. Stress and anxiety also propels not only just getting to simple targets, but it also propels the motivational energy for achievement. So higher levels of achievement. Great quality of achievement. Novel things that people do. Treading the path which has not been walked before is propelled by this emotional energy, which we call anxiety and stress. Stress and anxiety beautifully also helps in the realization of inner potential, in the realization of the team's potential, in the realization of the growth of nation states, the realization of the growth of organization, of societies. Very seminal work done by David McClelland in his Achieving Society, where he analyzed stories that mothers told their young children when they were growing up. A thematic analysis of these stories was done, and happily and not happily and to a large number of people, surprisingly, one of the themes that ran through most of these stories was preparation to manage pressure, preparation to put in hard work, preparation to persist, determination, grit. And all this requires energy, and all this also helps in managing pressure. And no achievement is possible without pressure. Fear of complete novelty of experience, and the mechanisms to respond are not there. Response have to be quickly learned. People have to adapt. People have to manage higher levels of anxiety, because radical change is accompanied with the phenomena of the unknown. Unknown is that which I have not experienced before, and that which I was not expecting, and it has happened. And fear and anxiety also helps in propelling the positive emotional energy for planned and transformational change. So when an organization be it the corporate sector or the government, when an organization is planning transformational change, if people are completely complacent about things and they are not under pressure, they will not deliver, they will not achieve, will not manage bring about transformation. Whether it is at the leadership level or even at the lower levels of an organization. So I have just quickly highlighted the facilitative aspects of anxiety, stress. Just to quickly recap the earlier points, stress is integral, stress is universal, it is integral to the complex mosaic of life. Nobody can get away with it, everybody experiences it. So I'm not very special if I'm going through stress and anxiety. Now, that is a very cruel statement to make, but that is reality and that is a fact. These are the positive aspects of stress. And I personally feel that if the positive aspects of pressure are not there, and if the positive aspects of anxiety and stress are not there, then life will be not worthwhile living. Because a huge amount of fun in life also has seat in stress and anxiety. A huge amount of creative expression also is somewhere related to anxiety. To use a oft quoted term that is used in psychology and even in organizational behavior, is the eustress aspect, the positive aspect of tension, the positive aspect of pressure. Now, what we normally understand and are concerned about is when this changes into negative, and it changes into negative, and it oscillates between positive and negative. There are some fortunate people who experience more positive tension than negative tension. And there are not so fortunate people who oscillate between positive and negative tension. And there are some people who are more troubled. And therefore, the degree of negative tension is much higher than the degree of positive tension and pressure. Another important point that I would like to highlight is that stress is anchored in fear. Fear, basically, fundamentally, of the unknown. Now, if we understand, it's also an instinctual response. It is highly protective because if there is a fire in the forest and you don't run, then you can't manage yourself and you will not be alive. And therefore, all stress and anxiety, which is negative, indicates that the tension and the pressure is moving on the ladder higher and higher of fear, which is becoming unmanageable. Now, fear, interestingly, various dimensions of fear are placed on a ladder. You know, in organized life, I've specialized in organizational psychology, which means study of human behavior in all kinds of organized living, whether it's family, whether it's society in general, community, work organizations, or institutions, supporting organizations, service systems, the government. When life is organized, then complexity of pressure increases. Because you've got to travel through different kinds of pressures. And the nature of pressure at times becomes unpredictable. Now, going back to the concept of the fear ladder, how do you experience fear? It has been, for the sake of simplifying it and not getting into too much technical terminology or jargon or becoming very theoretical, I would just like to highlight some of the steps in this ladder to fear. The first is hesitation, because one how to do something, what is going to be the outcome, and how will I experience that outcome, whether it's going to be sustained, can I manage myself, do I have the expertise? Now, to give you a very interesting example, I started my career working in an organization called ITC. I was fortunate to join the company when it was going through transformational plan, overhaul, change. ITC, as you know, is a cigarette company, and it exports huge amounts of tobacco all around the world. So when I joined, there was a FERA being clamped on the organization, and the excise duty on cigarettes and tobacco was going up. It was skyrocketing. And therefore, there was huge pressure on the leadership of the company. And maintaining viability, financial viability, and the profitability margins was becoming more and more difficult. At that time, ITC decided to get into unrelated diversification. Unrelated diversification means things that you've never done before, things that you've never experienced before, things that your leadership is not familiar with. The environments, the segments in the environment which you've not dealt with. At that time, the chairman of the company was a gentleman who could take huge risks. And you see, risk taking also requires a lot of preparation. It requires experience, it requires judgment, it requires insight, a very keen strategic sense. And the chairman at that time was fortunate, and we were very fortunate that the chairman had his knocks in life, and he learned. He had a passion to learn. Now he propelled unrelated diversification, and what do I mean by this? He said ITC is going to diversify into hospitality. Now, can you imagine a cigarette company which does not know anything else except cigarettes and tobacco getting into hospitality of 5-star, 7-star deluxe hotel chains? The top leadership did not know anything about, and hotel chains like the Oberois, the Tatas, the ITDCs, the Sheratons. Therefore, there was a lot of hesitation inside the company, a lot of criticism. People were under a lot of anxiety, not only about the performance of the company, but what will happen to their own career. I was in my office in Calcutta, where the corporate office was, and my good friend, Len Kennedy, who was the purchase and head for tobacco and for cigarettes, came to me one day and he said, hit list of the company, and maybe the company is planning retrenchment, and my name perhaps is topping the list. I said, why? He said the deputy chairman of the company called me and he said that, Len, I've decided to make you into a corporate chef. Len Kennedy did not know what had hit him. He said, sir, I have bought tobacco, I have bought cigarette paper, I have bought filters, I have bought packaging material for the last 15 years of my life. I don't know anything about cooking, about cuisine, about food and beverage management. So he came to me and he said, what the hell is going on? The deputy chairman had attended a dinner at his place. And he asked Len's mother who had cooked the meal. And the mother said that everything has been cooked by Len. Sareen was a great manager of people. He was a great person who had, and he could put that positive pressure on you to take the risk and to manage develop positive anxiety and positive stress and assured support. And assured not only support, but assured support for failure. And Deputy Chairman said that this is how he's concluded. There was great hesitation in Len. He says, I don't know what I'm getting into. It was totally unknown. And please believe you me, after 5 came the corporate chef of the chain. So hesitation is the first response to the unknown, to fear that the unknown generates. Then there is trepidation. Trepidation is a higher degree of fear, a higher degree of negative pressure. If I fail, what is going to happen to my family? If I fail, what is going to happen to my career? It's going to go for a toss completely. Will I succeed? Can I develop the competencies? So this is trepidation, more than hesitation. Then there is also anger and fear. Len was very angry at what the company was doing to his career and why this plan was being made. He couldn't understand it. And he was in a rage for a while. The company was being unfair. He was being pushed around. And then, of course, there is helplessness. I don't know. I'm not fully equipped. And then in the fear, in the ladder, you hit anxiety. Anxiety has a free-floating character. And what do I mean by saying that? I mean that your thoughts start racing in your mind, the negative anxiety. Your thoughts start racing in your mind, sometimes in an uncontrollable manner. The unpleasantness feeling comes in, and you tend to worry. Excessive worry is the beginning of anxiety. The anatomy of anxiety is intrusive thinking, intrusive thoughts, worry, excessive worry. Mind is hopping from one thing to the other like a monkey from one branch to the other. One cannot control one's thoughts. And many times, excessive anxiety results in unrealistic fears, which are normally called phobias. So, if you move towards the negative of anxiety, you can experience all this. If you stop at helplessness, then you can perhaps learn. Helplessness is also learned, and you can unlearn helplessness by communicating, by sharing, by getting inputs from others, by reading, by doing a SWOT analysis of your own competencies, and you become more and more, or you can become less and less helpless. But when it reaches anxiety, which is extreme, where pressure is converted into negative tension, stress is converted into distress, it results in paralysis to move on. And in cases where this persists for a long time, it is transferred to many other things. It can manifest as a compulsive obsessive disorder. It can manifest as a phobia, which is unrealistic, which cannot be explained by you. It can manifest into sleeplessness. It can manifest into many physiological ramifications. And therefore, the body also starts collapsing. Collapsing is a strong word, but the body is also burdened. And in extreme cases, if you've not processed it at the right time with the right inputs, you could experience some kind of a physiological, physical collapse. So this is the distress part of anxiety and stress. And therefore, I would like you to think that anxiety, stress has a positive aspect, which is very encouraging. And anything that is positive can get converted into negative. So it is good to enjoy food much, then that food starts humming. So there is a movement on a continuum. There is a movement in degree. So this is the anatomy of anxiety. I would like to give you a very deep personal example. I went through very high anxiety and fear. It's not that because I have a degree in psychology and specialization in organizational psychology that I would be spared from anxiety and stress. Like doctors also succumb to illness. In 2002, when I was in my mid-40s, I suddenly lost my husband. I had my son at that time was 16 years old. And I tell people about in 20 years of marriage with my husband, I think I was very fortunate because I got support in the true sense, in the emotional sense, appreciation, a lot of communication with him, great protection, stability, assurance of security. And suddenly, the world became dark, it collapsed, and I didn't know what to do. And I was hit with darkness and fear. And I was helpless. 16-year-old son was just 6 days. And please, I'm not trying to tell you that, I'm such a great person and therefore I coped with it. But I'm just trying to tell you that life is a mosaic. It's a journey of twists and turns. And one doesn't know what lies ahead and what is on the other side of the twist. And therefore, these things can just happen in life. And if this happens, it's a situation of great distress. It's a negative anxiety situation. And it's a situation of fear. And experiencing all the emotions on the fear ladder, helplessness, anger at what had happened to me, hesitation to take forward steps. My son was 6 days from his 12th board exam when my husband passed away. Now, so much had hit me that I had to just respond and cope. Why? Because I had to take responsibility. I didn't have time to grieve. I didn't have time to think about myself. My concern was for the 16-year-old child and his future, which was just lurking around the corner, where he had to appear for a very critical examination, where his future life perhaps, and his career depended on. So I'm frankly telling you, for at least 6-7 months, I really didn't know what grieving was. And people were surprised and they said, she's not shed a tear. What kind of response is this? I didn't have time to shed any tears. On the third day of whatever functions happen and ceremonies happen, I noticed that son was not studying, and I was very, very worried. And therefore, what I did was I went back to office and I started working. He said, Ma, what you're doing? So I said, well, I'm working. He said, you're working? I said, yes. And then after a day or two, I saw him with his books. And that was a sense of relief that, he's mustering up concentration, courage, and he's trying to focus. My anxiety, personal anxiety, started after 6 to 8 months. Initially, it was fear, inner grief, anger, pain, disgust at the condescension and at the pity that I was getting. On the ladder, there's also disgust on that ladder, helplessness. But anxiety actually started after 6 to 8 months. And what was that anxiety? The anxiety was, father has gone. What if I also go? What will this child do? So that was the anxiety. What if? So when anxiety gets developed, the big lurking question in front is what if? Anxiety about my personal health, anxiety about finances, anxiety about failure at work. Everything depended on personal health till the child grew up. I was the provider, I was the single parent. I had to run the home. I had to keep the fire in the kitchen burning. I had to also save money, security, safety. And anxiety about finances. Somewhere the values of not taking support as far as money was concerned. Now this when I look back in retrospect, perhaps this was coming from more from my ego and anger than from a balanced, realistic emotion and understanding. My parents were ready to support. My in-laws were ready to support, but I refused. And I think, you see, what I'm trying to tell you is that these are complex emotions and there are a number of shades involved. There are a number of overlaps. And therefore, ego and not wanting to appear to be helpless, a false sense of competence also catches you. And there about money, how did it manifest? It manifested in lack of sleep, and it manifested in my gastrointestinal system going for a 6. Now, before that, I was quite a strong, physically, physiologically, quite a strong person. Now, I understood it intellectually. I was trained in it, but I couldn't control it. I couldn't manage. So the thing is, you can read about it, you can understand it intellectually, cognitively. You read all the theories of fear and anxiety, you read all the coping mechanisms, but you don't seem to just understand and apply and cope. It's not possible. And that makes you feel more angry. Why can't you? Where is your understanding and how is it helping? And therefore, and I also decided not to take medication. Now today, I think if you are more enlightened and if you go to a medical specialist, even the family members, there is no stigma attached to anxiety and even to mental disorders like depression or any other disorder. But I'm talking about 20 years ago. This country perhaps was not so enlightened and society was still judgmental. I think there's been 1.5. So, and this can happen to you at work also. This can happen in any situation. This kind of fear of failure at work, this kind of personal health issues arising out of unmitigated high pressure and stress. This is not only connected with a personal tragedy, not able to control your aspirations, not giving it a realistic framework. I was helpless. I didn't know what to do. And many times, even in work organizations, even in communities and societies, people don't know what to do with it, and people don't talk about it, and people tend to solve it themselves and tend to live with it till it goes out of hand. I spoke to my boss at that time, and I said, well, this is happening. And then I thought that there is a continuum of, you see, there is a very beautiful continuum of intellectual activity. It starts with data. Today, there is a lot of tendency in organizations, even in all analytical sciences, looking at realistic data on the ground, which is a beautiful thing, which has to be done to manage complexity, trends, themes, forecasts, scenarios. This is required to run all kinds of organizations, even family, even planning for your career. So there is data, then that data is interpreted when you understand what is the meaning and what are the trends and what are the broader themes. Then the information is connected, certain deep dive is made, and you come out with a plethora of knowledge about that area or about that discipline. You construct models, constructs, concepts, principles, theories. So this is more to do with the analytical, intellectual, cognitive activity. Then there is something which goes beyond this. And there is the entire aspect of wisdom. Wisdom is not, all of it is not based on data and information that is available at that moment. And wisdom can reside in a younger person. It can reside in an older person, person of any class, creed, any kind of educational background. Wisdom comes out of sheer experience of life and a lot of work with the self. So I thought that I need some wise advice. And I met a very renowned person at the Chinmayanand mission. And I'm coming to the point, what helped me manage anxiety and stress was not all my knowledge of anxiety and stress, the contemporary analysis of anxiety and stress, but what helped me manage is what he stated, Swami Nikhlayanand. And I'm not suggesting that everybody goes to a Swami. You can go to a counselor, you can go to a coach, you can get advice from your boss, you can get same kind of guidance and same kind of enlightenment from even a younger person. But I went to him and he said, I asked him a question. I said, why has this happened? So he said, well, I don't have any answers. He said, what do you do with the past? And these are some priceless insights that I got, which I had not got and which my education had not given me, which perhaps my work experience of so many years had not given me. He says, what can be done with the past? Can you do anything? I looked at him and he said, two things can be done with the past. You can learn from your success and failure. And this learning helps you to manage a failure or to manage a catastrophe or to manage a situation which is evoking so much of grief and fear and pain and loss and unfulfilled aspirations. Whatever you can do with the past is to introspect, and that is the process, objectively, and to learn from your successes and failures. And that learning will help you manage your anxious present and future. He says, the future is not in your control. Everything you cannot. You can only plan a little about the future. And as life and organizations and the economy and technology becomes more and more complex, more and more planning is required, but that planning can never be complete. So the question about understanding the future completely is not a very intelligent question. You can only plan for the little bit for the future, and by little bit means, the degrees differ. If you're planning success of an organization or success of a government, you have to do a hell of a lot of planning. But one didn't plan for the pandemic. One couldn't even visualize that it's going to hit us. So he said that future does not actually exist. The next second becomes the future. The next second is the future. So this visualization of the future, the envisioning of the future has to keep in mind this. And he said, what can actually be done is to learn to focus in the moment. And if you learn to focus in the moment, then by bit anxiety that you are experiencing. And the last thing that he said was that please understand that nobody has control over the life of anybody. If a boss feels that I can control the career and the life of my subordinate, that person is living in a false reality. Nobody has total control on the life of anyone. You don't control the destiny and the life of your son. If anything happens to you, if I go to the work organization, if the boss feels that today if I chuck this person out, the person is going to become so anxious and the person is going to collapse, hurt himself, and would be written off. So his career, his life, and his happiness is in my hands. He says this is the total falsehood that a person can live. Now, to give you, just wrap it up, another thing that he stated was that the competence to manage anxiety is the competence to manage contradiction. What is contradiction? And he told me that contradiction is the short term and the long term. Both exist at the same time. Love and hate, both exist at the same time. Nobody can totally love you and nobody can totally hate you, but some people love you and some people hate you. The of life. Contradiction is that there is uncertainty and there is certainty. Focus means living in the framework of certainty based on developing your skills, developing your expertise, developing your knowledge, insights, wisdom, positivity, taking support from others, because uncertainty cannot be managed by uncertainty. Uncertainty can only be managed with certainty, and is the confidence, the focus, the centering that is developed gradually. And that focus, that centering, and that acceptance gives you the strength to manage pressure, gives you the strength to manage even debilitating anxiety. So one has got to work for becoming your own capability, because these things will keep happening. Contradiction is the essence of life. Complexity is the essence of life. I would like to just quickly wrap up by what I carried away and what I have learned about anxiety and stress and self-management in my entire working career and through these incidents. Realistic, clear goals and actionable steps. The capability to be proactively prepared for problems and problem-solving capabilities and skills. Social connectivity. The relationship framework that gives support is very often neglected in the race of careers and aspirations. I'm not saying that having high career aspirations is not good, but certain aspects cannot be neglected, because high career aspirations will take you to contradictions, will take you to more complexity, will take you towards more risk for failing. And failures, there's nothing wrong in failing, but you require to get over it. And the social connectivity or the relational support framework helps you. And the last thing, which personally I feel maybe at a later stage in life, and once you cross 60, or once you cross, say, 55 or 50, which is many times called the midlife crisis, where you start thinking about the transience of things, transience of uh, the goals of careers and transience of even wealth and life. I think finding a larger purpose than oneself. It helps you to put the context in a larger framework. And when the company told me to shift to social services, which I work for now, I didn't know anything about developmental sector, social services, but something told me that maybe anchoring at that stage would help me become happier with whatever the and therefore I started working in the villages of all the states right across the country, and we initiated a program called the Silai School program. USHA has a sewing machine business, and we skill women in sewing and stitching, and we took this program to rural India, even to the remotest of villages which have uh, great poverty, deprivation, no infrastructure, very little opportunity. Uh, and we took the program there, and women got trained, and gradually they started setting up their Silai centers and started earning, and stood on their own 2 feet. Now, in this journey and in this travel, I encountered many women who got widowed at a younger age, with no qualifications, with no money, with no social support, with 6 children, with no home, no house, no opportunity. And therefore, my own problem and struggle was put in that context and perspective. I didn't heave a sigh of relief, but then I redefined uh, something that I perhaps could be exaggerating in my mind, because once you encounter life on the other side, then the perspective that you are not the only person who is under pressure or stress. There are people who go through very difficult times, and your difficulty then loses its significance. And today, just 4 words to wrap up. I still work full time, and today I'm fortunate to connect 4 things. One is my profession, which is social services, where I'm contributing in the rural areas, in the less fortunate or the lower economic strata. It's made me experience various other dimensions of life. It's given me the eustress or the passion to serve, and I don't expect a student to do something larger than yourself. Sustains you at the age of the experience of pride is different from the energy to achieve, the energy to earn money or to succeed in career. It comes from the anchoring of seeing the largeness of life and you being a participant in that largeness. So it's the profession has got connected with somewhere the passion, and it has resulted in, and it has given me the strength to say my prayers every day. I know that things are transient, but I think at the core, I'm more calm and peaceful, and knowing that life is transient and there will be situations of challenge. But I think the peace of mind which has come has diminished active, negative, and negative stress and tension. Thank you very much. This is all that I wanted to say. If there are any questions, I would be very happy to respond.
Thank you for sharing your brilliant insights and personal experiences on the subject of anxiety and stress with us. And we're extremely glad to have you here. Now, I would like to proceed by filling in on a couple of details regarding the steps to avail the e-certificate. Please attend the full webinar, and when you see thank you on the screen, kindly post your email address along with your full name in the chat box. Fill the questionnaire you get on the post. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. The link for the same will be posted again shortly. And if you have completed all the 4 steps, automatically an e-certificate will be issued to you online. Coming up next is our second speaker for the session, Dr. Jaideep Kumar Sharma. And while Dr. Jaideep comes, kindly watch the video on the screen. Dr. Jaideep Kumar Sharma is a TEDx speaker as well as a motivator education from the reputed All India Institute of Medical Sciences. He is also a gold medalist in his field. Dr. Jaideep pursues his medical practice. However, his aim is to contribute to making society a happy community where people live without fear. He himself has fought a battle for his life and is a champion of overcoming adversity. Mr. Sharma, I request you to continue the session by sharing your insights with us. Sir, you're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, absolutely.
You're audible. Okay. So thank you so much, Riddhi, for filling in on details. Even I did not know about myself. But let's see. So today the topic has been chosen as anxiety, stress. How to manage that. And how to get yourself out of such situations. I wanted a little brief help here. Said sharing screen. Are you able to see my screen?
We can see you.
Okay. How do I share my images? I go to the 3 dots at the bottom. Can somebody support me in that one? And then how do I get my laptop to start working on this? Yeah, so okay, I got it. Okay. Completely got this. Thank you. Just a moment. And there we go. Okay. So there you see a smiley, or actually a person who's anxious, a person who's experiencing fear, maybe even anxiety, stress. Depression, yes. And this is what we often deal with. So let me start my story, and I'm going to be less formal, though I can't match up to Miss Priya Somaiya's conversation, whereby she was so thorough with the intricate details about how it goes about psychology. I'm going to share more from what I personally experienced in my life and why I have had not much time trying to figure out as to what else is possible. Because I was born back in 1963 to parents who were professionals, a doctor and a scientist. But the story I would like to start from is 2007, when I was already 43 years of age. And I lied there outside a hospital in a corridor, a hospital I call All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where I've had my education. And in that corridor, lying in that stretcher, I realized that I've just been wheeled out of an operation theater where my eyes were operated upon, because I had both side blindness in my eyes. And I'm a radiologist by my profession. So, and they're telling me that I probably would not be able to see ever again. You could imagine the kind of professional pressures that I was under, because the night before I had been seeing my patients, and now in a matter of just about 15-20 hours, I was given a certificate of complete blindness. That was stress. That the highest level that I've ever experienced. That was grief and pain and confusion and depression and everything negative that life could throw at me. Life had not been always like this. Were wonderful. They had taught me how to go about studying, educating myself, trying to create wonderful positivities out of education. And all of you youngsters who are listening in, it's the most important part of our journeys, especially the past. As Mrs. Priya Somaiya was also sharing, that into the early years, you spent actually trying to make breakthroughs happen in your life. It could be, in my case, it was scholarships along the journey of life, in the school, into the college times, and the Institute of Medical Sciences. My falling in love with my love of life from my school time, and then finally getting to marry her, having my child, my professional successes, the plans and everything, it was going beautiful. And then came the June of 1993. I was just into my 30th year, and the first time it came down meant in life. Breakdown. I found myself that day crippled. Breakdown happened, and I was left with a certificate which said, I'm going to be permanently disabled for the rest of my life. Right now on the screen, you can read, it's a certificate given again from my alma mater, which is the Institute of Medical Sciences, which right at the bottom says physically handicapped and has 55% permanent physical impairment. And I'm not even talking about that blindness. I'm talking about something that happened 11 years before. And this is a road accident. Out of that road accident, that one moment where we were headed towards celebrating a vacation on 6th of June in 1993, I met with a road accident. So they tell me, because I have no memories of all this. What I remember is waking up in the ICU of my All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and people telling me 6 months from that moment of accident, when I woke up, the second longest coma that has been reported in the country, that I've lost everybody in my family. And that included my wife, my son, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, everybody had parted. Though there were celebrations happening, and I was a little confused. As Priya just told us, it always comes with both these aspects. There is positivity and negativity about it. There were certain people celebrating, and I was the one who was depressed that day. Why this life? Why this? And then straight away, fast forwarding to that moment when this is the way my retina had looked in the year 2004 when I went blind. 60%, 55% permanent disabled person, now completely blind. Lying there on the stretcher in the corridor, recovering from the operation after my eye surgery, I was wondering what is the real truth about life? How do I know the truth? Is it the certificate which says I'm completely blind? Is it that certificate which said 13 years ago that I'm permanent physical disabled 55%? I do not know. These are people who taught me. These are brains who are worshipped in the medical fraternity. Are they really telling me what the truth is? Is it what I'm left with now? I walk into this house where there'll be nobody to live with, nobody to share life with, nothing to do. Let's analyze what truth is about life. We are all machines with basically just 5 senses. And you all know that's taste, smell, touch, hearing, and sight. Anything that I've known about this planet, anything that I've known about this day to day, anything that I've known about this little machine that I'm facing, which is showing my picture of you, or anything that I know about the room that I'm sitting in, is all because I have these 5 senses. If each one of them were to be taken away, and we know there are so many conditions, anosmia, where I can't smell, or blindness, and that I was experiencing that time, or a hearing disability where somebody is completely deaf, or a muscle dystrophy where you can't move, or a spine injury where you have no sensations of your own body, of your own, whether you want to defecate or pass urine or walk or touch or burn, or somebody biting you, somebody's burning you up, you can't feel anything because your brain has got disconnected from your body. These are situations, the whole life that we know only is an accumulation of knowledge that we've had through the 5 senses over time. My question to you all, and Anil Sharma ji will be a witness to that, because this is a question I had about the initial times. I had once asked Anil Saab, one of these functions, percent, most people answered it would be left only 80% if you can't smell, 60% if you can't touch, another 40% if you can't hear. But if all the 5 senses were taken away, the universe would vanish. I agree. The universe would vanish. But would you vanish? When we're talking of self-management, we are actually talking about those situations where the self, which you experience after all the 5 senses have left you. It's not an easy job. Yes, Somaiya is saying this is not an easy job. Maybe there are a lot of young listeners who would not even get the concept of what I'm saying, because till the time I turned 30, I hadn't had no breakdowns in my life. At least so they appear right now. The little issues that we were dealing with were hardly breakdowns by the standard that we have lived our lives right now. But and incidentally, after the accident and blindness, and obesity set in, and then diabetes, and then my disc prolapses happened in the back, and I was incapacitated further. I had anger issues. I had so much fear of competition and things failing all around me that I wanted to commit suicide, and I nearly tried that many times. It hasn't stopped. See, the point is, it hasn't stopped. Last year, 28th of February, I got operated for a cancer of my vocal cords. And yeah, and let's see what is the real perspective when things are not going right. When you sense fear and anxiety and stress because situations are not according to the way it is to you, because you're only seeing it from your 5 senses, and that's not even the truth. Say, for example, most of the planet talks about sunrise and sunset. That's not. It is us rotating, not the sun. And still, we would lift that billions of tons of helium and every day print on the front pages of every newspaper that sun is rising and sun is setting. That's not even true. Our 5 senses are so deceptive that they are at worst false and at best only deceptive. Somebody would like the sweet mango, and other person would die for a bitter whatever alcoholic drink he would want to have. Somebody would tell you wants to go to a hill station, another person wants to go to a seacoast on the planet is, and I keep wondering what the truth is. Is my five, just even my five senses, is my machine, myself, my body, the one I identified myself as Jaideep, this to really understand what the truth on the planet is. Lying outside in that operation theater corridor, I was either incapacitated, earlier 55% disabled, now completely blind, 100% gone person. Am I the truth? Is this the end? Is this where it all finishes? And even I don't even want any one of you to ever experience what it feels like being in such a situation. It's the most dreadful thing in your life. But is life only about that? Because there are certain people in our lives, as you could probably see on the screen now, people who have walked this planet, and more so walked my country, some who are from even not part of my country, maybe the person on the screen right now, or about Gautam Buddha, or read anything about Mahatma Buddha or Mahavir or Dayanand Saraswati or anybody who had walked this planet, or Jesus Christ, we would probably know they've all had breakdowns. What are the breakdowns? The experience of breakdown, what does it really mean to us? Can the experience of this to our advantage? It is under the pressures of billions of tons of soil on it that little piece of carbon, having been pressed for billions of years, when excavated, is now the most precious diamond on the planet. It is under the degrees of temperature that glass and steel is molten before it is called tempered and gains in its value. It is after a lot of effort that anything which was worthless can be chiseled into being an idol which would be worshipped by everybody on the planet. Is a breakdown always a problem? Why, when the things look so terribly bad, should we be lamenting or getting upset or feeling stress and anxiety about it? Well, we don't like anxieties, but let's review what anxiety really is all about. Anxiety is when things are not going according to you. But all of us, having gone through our anxieties, our breakdowns, today stand together, talking to each other on this lovely Sunday evening. Isn't that magical already? Isn't that success already? Isn't that reason enough to celebrate and rejoice? We want to know how to handle this. But the simplest way about understanding stress is that it is happening only inside of you. Out there on the planet, it's just a point of view. It's just another point of view. For some, it's a possibility. From others, it's a breakdown. Just a perspective. Virat Kohli facing the final over with maybe 20 runs to score and the world championship at stake would not be going through the best time of his life. But that's what defines him being a champion. A breakdown is when you get defined as a champion. A breakdown is when your trainer is asking you to give two more push-ups. When your coach is telling you to run faster and just cut off one more second out of your 100-meter dash. When the things are the way you would want them to. That's when challenge, you come out on the other side, you come out a champion. You would always come out on the other side, and that I can assure you, and we all have, and that's why we're here today together. It's just a perspective. Training creates possibility. Training creates you finding yourself. Now, what is the self I'm talking about? The self is what does not use the five senses. The self is what you experience when you've lost your five senses. And I came so close to often losing those senses. The self is way beyond all that. Who really am I? Who really am I? I've always left with this question till very recently. Really, who am I? Where is the I in it? One day there'll be a little news in the newspaper. There'll be a little garland around my picture, and people. Then, if a radiologist, somebody was to run an X-ray or a CT scan or an MRI of all those 90 kgs lying there, they would say, no, the Jaideep that Jaideep has known, the planet has known, is all there. So really, who am I? Who am I? Am I really the person I see? When we're talking of anxiety, fear, and stress, we're talking about that I suffering. That I suffers. My loss of eyesight or disability or diabetes or slip disc or an artificial face. Anxiety is not being caused to the self all inside of you all the time. That self.
183.
We were as human beings better. What really is life about? What is us being about humans? Insaniyat, Manushya. Humans are only to have two features. About it. Like either way it works the same. We were created the way we were created. The best that our body performs is when we are free of all fear, anxiety, stress, depression, scare, confusion, pain. Everything is taken away from us. We perform the best. But where is it all being experienced? Inside of us. Onto that soul. Does the soul power not experience or experience it? My journey of life has told me that there is something inside of us which can actually make you change the perspective about what is pain and what is many people went on to do things where they were more successful in doing. But every time facing a failure, we think it's everything else. It is just that you're being trained the next time to do better. My body, I realized, and I wrote this very recently, might identify with this picture somewhere. My whole life is nothing else but only the battle of Mahabharata. Yeah? The chariot is my own physical body. That's just the chariot. It's not me. My arrow is the training that I get to use. Each and every action that is an arrow that I shoot. The Almighty Himself is my chariot. Moment by moment chooses to make me be confronted with various experiences. My challenges and breakdowns. You celebrate my soul, my earth, as only continuously shoot an arrow and always in space. Not stopping. Yeah, no. Because nothing else. Happiness is something. If I had some of you who are elder enough to have babies and their own children, and some of you who can identify yourself with how you experience parenthood among your parents, would know that the eldest in the family has only one blessing, that is khush raho, be happy. They know things are not going to work for you every time. But the only thing that works every time is you being happy. You start cooking when you're unhappy, and you start driving when you're happy, and when you start singing when you're happy, and when you start dancing when you're unhappy, you will see a whole lot of magical difference between the two situations. It is for you to choose what you're choosing. You can choose anything. I took on that moment in time when things were not going right. The right voltage was happiness. Because if I were not happy and I was performing my stuff, be it an ultrasound, a CT scan, X-rays, and whatever other procedures and blood samples and other diagnostic things that I do with patients who walk in, I would not be performing at my best. So my performance depends on my happiness. And I started challenging myself. Projects which would show me if I'm happy enough to take on more and more, and am I building muscles about it. So I started a project called Heal Always. That was something which was so passionate. I was so passionate about, because heal to me meant health experience at the speed of light. I was an assistant professor with All India Institute of Medical Sciences when I met with the accident. And it took my All India Institute of Medical Sciences 10 years to get me back on my feet and get me back home. But I was committed that this would never ever happen again to anybody else. And nobody would be told that you are incapable, disabled, and you cannot come back to normal life. And so I created a group of doctors across the globe, somewhere around 2008 to 2009. Across the globe, who are masters in the skill of healing and medicine, and created a virtual website called Heal, whereby youth and people in the villages also had an access through the use of internet and media. Be listened to, be addressed, and be taken care of by the best of best brains on the planet. And that to me was health experience at the speed of light. This is being used currently by IFCO in a project whereby they are in every state of the country opening centers where patients can walk in, even if they don't have a smartphone. Just go to a center. Actually, does connect them to the best doctors on the planet, and somebody who interprets as a mediator lets them speak in any language, and they get medical advice right sitting in their villages the way it is that very moment in time, whether it be a snake bite, an accident, a fracture, a convulsive episode, lady is bleeding, or a child is having high grade fever. All those can now be attended through the use of media. And this is a project we started about 8 years ago when I was turning out here. India is essentially a rural country, and we needed this thing. The next thing that I could think of is to take care of the old people. So we started working on old age homes and addressing old age people's issues, sitting in their old age homes or even in their houses, whereby they have no time and no physical fitness to walk up to and get themselves be attended by the doctors, be attended. Organ donation is my passion that I work the maximum on because India, the youth, but the problem with India is despite of 11% youth deaths in India are 19% of the universe. If we could only share on our way out the wonderful bodies that we are, so if we left redundant, somebody would be burning them up in a few hours or burying them. If that material can be used for healing the planet, because transplant of organs is a possibility now, magical results can happen. And as much as simple mathematics tells us, in about a matter of about 100 days, 60% hospitals will have to shut down. Every anxiety, every stress and fearful condition can actually result into breakthroughs. Against all odds, magical results are possible. When you next time see an anxiety or fear or stress, well, I want you to see beyond that, because beyond that, in the darkest cloud, you'll see a very fine light. And that's what you should be seeking. If I can, or any other way, be in support of you, it'd be a privilege. Doctor, so I would be in medical problems if anybody is facing or anybody is challenged with. But, guys, happiness is the key, and anxiety and stress is the problem. You can do with anxiety and stress because that's inside of you. Out there, it's just a challenge, which is going to make you a stronger person if you go through it. Go through it with a smile. God bless. Thank you so much.
working very closely and doctors like Dr. Jaideep, and I have great admiration for the expertise lying in the All India Medical Institute. I think it's a seat of learning, and I think it's a seat of expertise, and therefore, so this is, I think, this is what I have to say as far as response is concerned.
Wonderfully put, ma'am. I would like to add a couple of points here. This challenge, the pandemic that the earth is facing right now, if you notice carefully, has already made this planet a more livable one. The air is cleaner, the water is cleaner, the weather is better. And if you were to statistically check, India actually has lost lesser lives than it would have lost had the pandemic not happened. If we keep talking about what the newspaper is telling us about so many 100 people and so many 1,000 people dead, I would only want a comparative from the last year into the same days, how many Indians lost their lives for various other reasons. The alcohol, the other diseases, the road accidents, the anxiety, the relative health of Indians today is way better than it was at the turn of the year. The people who are unfortunate have lost are people who certain health have fallen victim to this. Who are humane, considerate for others, none of them have made it. The ones who got scared and still fell ill, well, doesn't that life are the best number of on the planet in one single day, every day, consecutively for the last 3 months. We are be proud of. What we have taken is that home food, being together in a family, thinking of community, all those things, that wonderful clean air, clean water, home cooked food. This is wonderful. It is so simple. And we realized that running around and all those things were not really required. We still managed to meet. We still managed to run our operations, our factories. The agricultural production has gone up then more higher than the last 6 months. It was a problem because we are only talking about things that went wrong. We could equally talk about things that went right. And this has actually been a breakthrough. It's just, as I said, a matter of perspective. When we do make it, the community immunity that would spread among us would make us immune to this condition, and we would not fall prey to it. So relax, follow the rules, and you would on the other side be coming out champions, and that I guarantee you.
All right, so here's another running short on time. We'll just take up this last one. How do we handle the anxiety when our parents are toxic to their children, such as in case of narcissistic personality disorder?
Ma'am Somaiya?
Narcissist personality disorder with the parents, of the parents?
I believe so.
I see. Narcissism is unrealistic focus on the self, being obsessed with the self. I think, how do children manage this if a parent has this disorder? I think today the child does not take things lying down. And therefore, there have been many instances, at least that have come to my knowledge, where the child has mustered up courage. And, because information, the kind of communication that the child is exposed to, encouragement, Secondly was children don't talk about money. So, but today, if a child doesn't question, people start getting worried. So I think constructive questioning is going to happen today. If one of the parents is not having the disorder, the parent will support the child. It is mirroring back to the parent what has been the impact of self-obsession. Self-obsession actually impairs listening, and it impairs the connectivity with emotions of others. It encourages staying within the rules and not letting the person find his freedom, even if it is for a happy situation in which we are today, because of the peer experiences, because of exposure in school, because of the internet. Somewhere the child will pick up the courage to mirror back in his or her own way. And children will not take things lying down today. So I think in putting the child to ask questions and not to take things lying down, that will help. And as far as personality disorder is concerned, personality disorder is a more serious thing. Now, a child cannot do very much about a personality disorder if it is very deep rooted. That just has to be treated. I'm talking about the kind of obsession with my own rules and regulations and my own values and my own sense of discipline. That is questioned today. Certainly, the child will not be able to deal with a very deep-rooted personality disorder. Somebody has to be sensible to get treatment. Somebody's got to get the person to a psychiatrist or a counselor in the family. If it is hurting, if it is damaging, if it is destroying children, relationships, health, the child cannot deal with it. If you're talking about a concrete, defined personality disorder. But control, exaggerated control by the parent, will not last for too long today. Apart from you, the child is also learning outside. I remember my nephew telling his father in front of me, I don't want your सलाह हमेशा मत दिया क्योंकि मैं भी सोच सकता हूँ अगर आप 30-40 साल पहले if you go back, my father used to tell me that in his entire life he must have spoken 100 sentences. I remember speaking every day to my father, if not at least once a week. So that was the shift. So the happy news is that your child is going to mirror it back to you. Child is learning from many other sources, not only the family. That is how I can respond to this question.
What I'd like to add to this, Vriddhi, is that we are so proud that people like you've become the source of inspiration for us, the grown-ups. We doing a little bit of discipline ourselves would be fairly absolutely in line with we really being in love with you. If you take care of your only children, if you only can take care of yourself, your children would anyway take care of themselves. You're the smarter race. You're you're the better people. We never were able to do whatever you people can achieve guidance, and that would be only if we can manage ourselves.
And just to add just one sentence, if you look at organizational life, leadership is getting by smart, intelligent juniors in many things that they don't know. So, which is called reverse coaching. I know many companies where the MD of the company is being coached by a young brand manager. Now, I'm just trying to amplify the, and I totally agree. The generation is a fantastic generation. And I'm not saying this to please the young people who are listening to them. Many things have led to it. But I think the kind of courage, the kind of, we didn't take that. Or when we were your age. Because of many reasons, whatever the reason is, but it was not taken. So it's fantastic to be with the younger generation. Thanks.
A huge
Yes,
thanks
please.
to our renowned speakers and to all the participants for joining us. And before wrapping up the session, I would like to acquaint you all with the steps to avail the e-certificate once again. So you will receive the e-certificate if and only if you have attended the full session in the chat box. Followed our page on Facebook as well as Instagram. And lastly,
For this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Doing what?
Thank you.
all right, bye-bye.
Bye.